Good morning, Westeros!
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I am Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Glove.
And I'm Kyle, and we're the fucking Morning Throners.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Morning Throners podcast. We're jumping right in to Tyrion 2. And I'm so jacked up for this podcast, I can't even explain how much fun I'm going to have.
Let's go!
All right, so we start out, and it leads off with Tyrion. He's leaving Winterfell, and he's kind of talking about how they left the same time as the king, and like all their bullshit left, and all the fancy shit, and the thousands of people, and then it was just him and 5 other guys and 3 boys.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 8 people total. And he says, like, when they first...
8 people, 5 guys, 3 boys.
And a wolf.
And a wolf.
Dire wolf.
He says, like, when they first leave, there's, like, lots of farmlands and, like, they see, like, huts and stuff. But after, like, 3 days, they're just, like, in the middle of the forest, basically.
Nothing.
Well, and then they even pass, like, mountains, too,
And,
right?
yeah, so they got basically mountains on their left and then just dense wood on their right. And they call it the Wolf's Wood, which is the wood on their right, to the east. Yeah, so who's with him? He's got Jon Snow,
Benjen. Two of his Lannister guardsmen.
2 of his Lannister guards. So him, those two, that's 5.
Yoren,
the other guy from the Night's Watch, and then Yoren brought 2 rapers.
Two new
rappers.
2 rappers.
And they got a bunch of horses and some ravens.
So Kyle, why are these rapers with the crew?
Because it was either head to the wall and serve or get castrated. I mean, I think that...
Chop that dick off.
Well, that's just balls, right? But
I don't know.
either way, like, I mean...
I think we've debated that if it's been balls, if both the twigs and the berries, or just the berries, or just the twig.
Well, I mean, castration typically is just the berries.
I think it can be any combination of it.
Can we get a Google search, Glow?
Glow.
What do we need again?
Google search live castration video.
No.
Human.
What is castration? Removal of the testicles of a male animal or man.
So test
Balls,
so
no penis?
Is that what Jeff said?
Berries.
So Jeff is right, Kyle was wrong?
Play it back, Nelson.
Balls and penis?
I think balls is mandatory for castration. Penis is optional, is what we came to.
Now you're just making stuff up for the definition.
Well, I
then.
mean, they don't say anything about the penis, which means you can or cannot include it at your leisure.
I'll Google what we needed to. Is penis involved in the castration?
Well, yeah. So it says a eunuch is a man who has been castrated, and we learned that castrated is balls getting cut off.
So, Glow, your
I'm
conclusion.
a little confused.
What's your conclusion?
I don't know.
Just
I
balls,
need
and
research.
dick? Just look up live castration video.
Image.
Involved.
You need to go to the image search.
Yeah, just
In fact, surgical castration usually involves removal of the testicles that produce the male hormone testosterone. The penis is left intact. Men who are castrated are still able to have an erection and may be capable of intercourse. How about that?
Nelson, you want to add to that definition?
So Jeff was right. Kyle was wrong.
No, I was wrong.
Practice of
I thought
castration
penis came off too.
sometimes involve and it fucking bleeps out.
Nipples. I've been intentionally leading this conversation in circles. I think Kyle realized a little bit ago. Castration can be anything. What we found out is castration can be dick or balls. It doesn't matter.
That's not.
All right, no, castration's balls. So, but what do we find out about the wall here? I think this is like the first time. Maybe Kyle already knew it, but like, it's like a punishment.
Yeah, it's an alternative to punishment. Essentially, it's still a punishment, but it's maybe you get to keep a little more of yourself when you go there.
A little more honor
than the other option. Yeah.
So, and then we find out later, Jon realizes it for the first time. Like, Jon thought that there was more honor in the Night's Watch than there is.
Oh yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
Mostly what this chapter's about is Tyrion revealing to Jon that it's like not all.
Yeah, it's shit.
Yeah, it sucks.
Why didn't no one tell him this though? Like, how come he seems so ignorant to it.
John?
Well, I mean, he was a kid.
Yeah, he's
right?
only
I guess you're
14.
right, though.
He's 14.
Somebody
I mean-
probably should have warned him.
They like just should not have let him do this at this age, which is what they were talking about earlier. And they're like, fine, I guess it works. Because Cat doesn't want to, right? I mean, it's kind of like Ned decides to send him, and Tyrion asks like, why did Ned do this? And it's basically because can't take him to the court with him when Ned goes south, and Cat's not going to let him stay at Winterfell. So since he wanted to do it, it was a perfect situation for everybody except for John.
Pretty much just get the fuck out of here because Catelyn didn't want him anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So Tyrion and Benjen don't really like each other. On the way up, Benjen like offers Tyrion his like coat.
And Tyrion says,
Tyrion thinks
I'll gratefully accept.
Yeah, Tyrion thinks that Benjen like is pretty sure Tyrion will decline the offer, but then he accepts it anyway and says something like, "A Lannister always accepts like whatever it can get."
He didn't say that to him, but he did. I mean, he like
He didn't say it to
described
him, but he
as
did
that.
it to himself. Yeah,
Lannisters took what was offered.
yeah.
Which I think that's kind of important. I don't know why personally yet, but I feel like that's gonna come back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So they're how far along are they like on the thing? It says like 10 days.
No, it says a fortnight.
Or do you guys just like saying a fortnight?
No, I
think
mean,
it's
my
both.
synopsis in front of me says fortnight.
Okay.
I think it's both, but yeah, I think they also like to say that.
So every time I assume distance between places, I always assume distance between Castle Black, which is where they're going, and Winterfell is a fortnight. Or two? Is it two
You're wrong.
fortnights? So
I'm not
I guess
sure.
they're like halfway.
But I mean, this is even further than Tyrion thought. Like, I mean, he knows his shit. But he was like, until I was out here, like, I didn't realize just
How bad the roads are.
How
Yeah.
fucking big
How
it is
crazy
and
this
how bad
is,
the
yeah.
roads are.
I think it's funny how. And
Oh, it's
probably-
18
I mean,
days.
that's what a fortnight is, or that's how long they
A fortnight's 2 weeks, but they've been on the road 18 days because when Tyrion goes to read, it says on the 18th day he was drinking a sweet amber and reading the histories and properties of dragons.
You know what else is crazy is how did they bring fucking wine the last 18 days? You know he's drinking it.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to run out of that.
You just need like a mini, like one of those little Heineken mini kegs worth, right?
No, man, but then he's
18
giving it to
days,
everybody.
he's drinking it nonstop.
But he's a little guy, and that's like a lot. Wine's stronger.
He's a
than
big
beer.
drinker.
Wine's stronger than beer.
Yeah, I mean, I
Come on,
agree
you
with
know
Jeff on this
Tyrion.
one. How's he bringing that much wine?
They
He's
got
gotta
a,
be-
they have a
that's
bunch
why-
of horses,
Yeah,
Maybe they do have a bunch of horses, but maybe that's why he made those two dudes come.
and he's not like
Yeah.
blacked out.
Maybe they're not actually knights.
well, two of them are Lannisters.
They're just
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, maybe they're not actually Lannisters. They're just filled with
They're
wine.
just like ale salesmen that he keeps with him.
No,
No,
they're
they're
just
just-
they
oh,
are
they're
water
just cake,
or
yeah,
They're,
yeah.
skins.
they're like a
Yeah.
Trojan horse.
Well, one of
but
them's
with
cooking
wine.
a stew at the end of the episode, so that'd be
Okay.
impressive for a keg to be cooking a stew.
You know what else is crazy? Another little off-subject thing.
Go ahead.
A stew takes a long time to cook. If they want to get any flavor involved into that broth, they need to let that fucking cook together. They need to let all the ingredients meet each other in the pot for
You
a
know
while.
they're not waiting that long, dude.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That stew's gonna suck dick because they didn't put any flavor in it. They
Well, when
didn't let any
Tyrion walks up, there's still
flavors
skin in the
develop.
rabbit, right? The meat should take like the longest to
Squirrel.
cook, and it's like the rabbit hasn't
Squirrel.
even gone in the stew, and Tyrion like
Squirrel.
Yeah,
walks
so
up.
they're definitely eating raw
Squirrel,
fucking
whatever.
squirrel with no flavor to the broth.
Yeah, he said add pepper.
Just like an awful. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they need to fucking add time.
Some rosemary.
Real time or like time THYME?
Both. All right, continue.
So Tyrion's reading this book on dragons. I just have a little quote from the chapter. It starts with what some of the shit he's reading. Dragonbone is black because of its high iron content, the book told him. It's strong as steel, yet lighter and far more flexible, and of course utterly impervious to fire. Dragonbone bows are greatly prized by the Dothraki, and small wonder. An archer so armed can outrange any wooden bow. Tyrion had morbid fascination with dragons. When he had first come to King's Landing for his sister's wedding to Robert Baratheon, he had made it a point to seek out the dragon skulls that hung on the walls in the Targaryen throne room. King Robert had replaced them with banners and tapestries, but Tyrion had persisted until he found the skulls in the dank cellar where they had been stored. He had expected to find them impressive, perhaps even frightening. He had not thought to find them beautiful, yet they were. As black as onyx, polished smooth, so the bones seemed to shimmer in the light of his torch. They liked the fire, he sensed. He thrust a torch into the mouth of one of the larger skulls and made the shadows leap and dance on the wall behind him. Teeth were long, curving knives of black diamond. The flame of the torch was nothing to them. They had bathed in the heat of far greater fires. So it's when we find out that there's freaking... And he talks about it more later. There's fucking huge-ass dragon skulls that used to be in the throne room for the kings before Robert, but Robert removed them. But Tyrion like still saw them. Like, what did he say, in the cellars or
In
something?
the cellar, in the dark
Yeah,
cellar.
well, why wouldn't you want to see those, man?
Yeah, dude,
I mean, I
they sound
understand
sweet.
Just a symbol
Robert
of
taking them down.
the
No, I get him
Targaryen.
taking it down, but I mean, I'd want to see them.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
So I'm sure I have it later on, but they say that the biggest one. So they say that there's 19 skulls total. The
Yeah.
oldest ones are over 3,000 years old. But he also
And
says
the
oldest
youngest ones are over 100 too.
over 150. Yeah, that's when the last ones died, I guess. But the oldest ones are 3,000 years old, but it's also the ones that Aegon the Conqueror came with.
The 3 oldest ones are the ones that he came with.
Yeah, and they're over
Yeah.
3,000 years old. But Aegon's conquest only happened 300 years ago.
Well, I mean, I think these dragons. You think
George.
how big they are.
Yeah, they're literally 3,000. They were like 2,500-year-old dragons when he was riding them.
I mean,
Really?
They must have been if they're 3,000 years old and he only...
or George just messed up his timeline.
I don't think so.
That's probably what
I
happened.
don't think
George
so.
doesn't believe in timelines.
When does he say there's a
So
3,000?
that he can say shit like that and
He says,
get away with
well,
it.
Tyrion
That's
says
exactly
the oldest are
what-
3,000 years old, the ones that came with Aegon the Conqueror, the one that he used. But that was only 300 years ago. Right now it's 298 AC after the conquest.
You know what? We read AC the other day, and I didn't even think to ask, but now that makes sense.
Before and after conquest. Yeah, so they were the oldest and largest were the 3 that Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters had
And
unleashed
if-
on the 7
yeah, I was gonna say,
kingdoms,
and his
is
2
what they
sisters.
said. Balerion, Meraxes, and Vagar. Now they were named for gods, I think it says.
Yeah.
So how big are these dragons? They say how big. They say like
They can eat
Meraxes and
mammoths.
Vagar
Huge.
are like the same size, and Balerion's even bigger than those two.
Balerion, the Great Dread.
So how
Black
big is
Dread.
Balerion, Glow?
He can swallow a mammoth whole or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other two, they said a man could ride a
horse down their gullet.
Yeah. So
And it wouldn't come back.
Even those are giant. Think about it. You can ride a
Huge,
horse down it. And so the Tyrion thinks about like when these dragons were like he's trying to imagine them like actually being in the sky, and he remembers like when his actual ancestors would have seen these dragons. Do you guys remember this? What Tyrion remembers here?
Yeah. So this was when the war started happening, and there was the true 7 kingdoms, and the Targaryens had come over and already taken over like the King's Landing ish area, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And the Lannisters, the current Lannister, teamed up with the King of the Reach, and they met out in the field, and I forget what numbers they had,
They had
but
like
they
5
said
times.
5 times what the Targaryens
The
had, and they said
Targaryens
the
had.
Targaryens' numbers were probably even unloyal because a lot of them were the new people that they just took over, and they were like, oh shit, alright, we're gonna win, and then here comes 3 motherfucking dragons that just burn, 4,000 or 4,000 people,
men that one day.
and the battle became the Field of Fire.
The field of fire. Yeah, because they were fighting in like the middle of like a big wheat field during like harvest time, so everything was like really dry and everything just got lit up. Dude, this fucking dragon is big enough to eat mammoths whole. Imagine like being in that fucking fight, like running out.
Oh my god, how do I run away?
yeah. How the fuck do I get out
You
of here?
can't.
You
There's no escape.
Literally just roast. Oh my gosh, it was the worst.
Is there a stream anywhere?
So I don't know if this is like.
It would just boil the water.
It's weird because it seems like this is what Tyrion's thinking about, but not what the books like. The book seems like kind of boring. Like it seems like the very first line that I read, "Dragonbone is black because of its high iron content." The book told him. It seems like after that, it's just what Tyrion's like thinking to himself, like remembering what he knows about his own like ancestors and stuff. But then Jon comes up.
Why do you read so much?
Tyrion looked up at the sound of the voice. Jon Snow was standing a few feet away, regarding him curiously. He closed the book on a finger and said, "Look at me and tell me what you see." The boy looked at him suspiciously.
Is this some kind of trick? I see you, Tyrion Lannister.
Ah, you're remarkably polite for a bastard, Snow. What you see is a dwarf. What are you, 12?
14.
14, and you're taller than I'll ever be. My legs are short and twisted. I walk with difficulty. I require a special saddle to keep me from falling off my horse. A saddle of my own design, you may be interested to know. It was either that or ride a pony. My arms are strong enough, but again, too short. I will never make a swordsman. Had I been a peasant, they might have left me out to die or sold me to some slaver's grotesquerie. Alas, I'm a Lannister of Casterly Rock, and the grotesqueries are all the poorer. Things are expected of me. My father was the hand of the king for 20 years. My brother later killed that very same king, as it turns out. But life is full of these little ironies. My sister married the new king, and my repulsive nephew will be king after him. I must do my part for the honor of my house. Wouldn't you agree? Yet how? Well, my legs may be too small for my body, but my head is too large. Although I prefer to think it's just large enough for my mind. I have a realistic grasp of my strengths and weaknesses. My mind is my weapon. My brother has his sword, King Robert his warhammer, and I have my mind. And a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone if it's to keep his edge. That is why I read so much Jon Snow. That's a great little, not so little, but great Tyrion
Long
quote.
passage. Yeah, that's a good. It kind of shows you how witty. I mean, not just witty is, but just intelligent overall. Just
And that they're both,
How Tyrion is, yeah.
and they talk about it later when Jon says something else about the Night's Watch, but like they're both like aware. And I think the words Tyrion uses later are like, you're not afraid to face a hard truth, or like a wise man will face a hard truth where most people would deny it. Tyrion is just like staring down the barrel of being a dwarf and all the shit that he got for it, but he's like kind of lucky at the same time, and realizes he's lucky that he was born highborn, or it would have been way worse.
Very true.
yeah.
Kyle, thoughts on Tyrion?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what you guys said. It seems like he's got he knows what's going on. How's that? He knows that he has this is his option, essentially, for honor. It's kind of, if you're looking at it that way, like we were talking about.
Yeah, he
Earlier
realized
with-
if he's gonna make anything of himself, he's gotta get smart. He's gotta get good. So then Tyrion thinks about like one quick thing about Jon's appearance. You guys remember what he said? What he like thinks?
He's a Stark, and he looks like nothing like his mom.
He says like,
pretty
yeah,
much.
this guy's got nothing of his mom, and he just
He's
looks
a
exactly
pure
like
Stark.
his dad.
Yeah.
She had left little in her son.
So then Jon is weird. Tyrion says that whole long passage, and Jon just like doesn't say anything back. Says like Jon
Pondering.
regards him silently. Yeah, but then he replies with, "What are you reading about?" And Tyrion just like,
yeah, I mean,
dragons.
it doesn't say how long. I mean, he could have been like, all right, that's true. Like, all right, what you reading about? Like, he's curious now. Like, all right, if you're trying to think if you're trying to make yourself
I
smarter,
gotcha.
what are you reading about to make yourself smarter?
I guess.
Yo, let me get some of that whetstone over there, man. Trouble my mind a little bit.
I guess that makes sense, because especially with Jon's follow-up question, because Tyrion says dragons, and Jon's basically like, why is that? Why? What's the point?
Why
of
would you
reading
be
about
reading about
important,
dragons?
yeah.
They're gone.
Exactly. And Tyrion like admits to Jon that like when he was young, he had like a fascination with dragons. He said he used to like start fires like in the basement of their castle and just stare at he literally says like stare at the flames for hours.
And imagine that it was burning his family.
Yeah. His sister and her father.
He said that?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I didn't
What are you,
remember.
spark
he's like-
noting or reading over there, Glow? Come on.
And then
The fuck.
and then he told him, he told Jon, he's like, and you don't do that? Like, bullshit.
Yeah. He calls Jon.
Catelyn
on
was
it.
so nice to you, and
Yeah.
Rob always took you for granted or some bullshit like that.
Yeah. So exactly what
He
you
was
guys just said.
connected with him.
He calls Jon. Jon calls him on it for saying he's about like hurting his family. He turns around, calls Jon on it. Then Tyrion says what basically what Jeff says. He says like, "Oh, I'm sure Lady Catelyn was super nice. Rob never like was ever mean to you." And then he's like, "But why would he ever be mean to you? He was gonna get Winterfell, and you were gonna go like freeze the wall or whatever." And he's like, I wonder why Ned Stark sent you to the wall, like why he wanted to get rid of you." So something like that. And then Tyrion.
Do you think Tyrion has like a issue with Jon?
No. I think he's kind of connecting with
Yeah,
him here,
I think that
actually.
I think he's like trying to be like a mentor for like
Yeah.
the downtrodden, even though like, while they're not downtrodden because they're both highborn, they're both kind of like the
They're in a
outsiders.
similar situation, and he's older than him. He's trying to kind of give him some hope, I
Try to
guess.
guide
and
him a
some-
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Tyrion keeps pushing Jon's buttons. So after Jon gets him to shut up about his family, he makes a mention about like the Night's Watch not being honorable, or Jon says like the Night's Watch are honorable, and Tyrion's like, you're too smart to believe that. You see these guys, they're rapers, thieves, debtors, peasants, bastards like you.
They stink.
And they're getting sent up to the wall to watch out for monsters that don't exist. He's like, at least it's not dangerous because you're
Grumpkins and Snarks.
Snarks,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, at least it's not dangerous because there are no Grumpkins and Snarks, but it's so cold your freezer balls off. But at least you guys swear not to use your balls or something like that. Like, you swear not to use them anyway. So Jon gets even more pissed and pulls up his fisticuffs. And
Watch yourself.
Tyrion immediately feels
I
bad.
get my... Oh, shit.
Tyrion immediately feels bad and takes a step forward to like pat him on the shoulder to like reassure him. And Ghost like thinks he's like coming at Jon, I guess,
Here
and like
comes
just
his
like knocks his ass
direwolf
over.
pup.
Yeah,
Knocks him over hard, too. Makes
Yeah.
him bleed.
yeah. And then Tyrion tries to get Jon to help him up, like reaches out a hand, and Ghost like hops in between the two of them.
Well, I was gonna say he asked Jon for some help, and Jon's like, "No, you gotta ask
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
Like you gotta
So then Tyrion does
beg
though.
for it a little." Yeah. Well, sarcastically though, he said, "I should be very grateful for your kind assistance, Jon."
Yeah.
And then Tyrion or Jon calls off Ghost.
Yeah, and then he actually like picks him up, and he says like it's easy because
Yeah.
he's so tiny.
Jon does make a joke for once, which is pretty funny.
He says, "Oh yeah," he says,
Yeah, I thought you were a grumpy.
"Yeah," because Tyrion asks why he attacked him. Jon says, "Thought you were a Grumpkin." And then they bring that back up later. So then they go back. They just go right back to camp, right? Nothing else happens there.
Yeah, they had to camp.
They drink some. I think they like have a drink of. Tyrion gives Jon a drink of wine after all that, and they go back to camp.
Yeah.
And oh no, right before they go back, Jon.
Oh, this is where they do that part.
Yeah,
you were
Jon
talking
asks
about,
it. Tyrion's like, if like they have some wine. Jon's like, did you what you say earlier? Like it's actually true. And Tyrion's like, yeah. Jon Snow set his mouth a grim line. If that's what it is, that's what it is. Tyrion grinned at him. That's good, bastard. Most men would rather deny a hard truth than face it. Most men, the boy said, but not you. No, Tyrion admitted. Not me. I seldom even dream of dragons anymore. There are no dragons. So then they go back to camp. They have the stew, the delicious stew we talked about earlier. And they like mention the joke again. What happens? Benjen says something like,
Where were you so far away from camp? Why or you can't go that far
I thought
away
the
by
others had
yourself?
gotten you.
yeah, I thought the others
Yeah.
had gotten you. And Tyrion says it, right? Not Jon.
Yeah.
He says, no, just Grumpkins.
It was the Grumpkins.
Grumpkins, and Jon smiles. Then they eat the shit, drink the wine, everybody goes to bed. Tyrion's the last one. Jon's staying up for like Night's Watch. And like as Tyrion goes to bed, Jon just like sitting there staring into the fire, like Tyrion was talking about earlier in the chapter. That's what they're talking. That's what this is a reference to. Is that what you guys thought?
Maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, 100%. He thinks that Jon is imagining
His like family dying.
Catelyn burning. Yeah, for sure. That was definitely
Yeah.
what that was.
So the last line of the chapter.
That's debatable. He could just be cold and.
The
No,
last line of the
'cause-
chapter is the boy stood near the fire, his face still and hard, looking deep into the flames. Tyrion Lannister smiled sadly and went to bed.
It was just about that whole conversation.
Yeah, it
about
was-
how
it
he
was
used to
basically
burn
the
the
same
fire
thing.
and
I don't
stare
know.
into it and imagine everybody was burning.
Yeah.
And now here Jon is doing it like an hour later.
Yeah,
Do you
I
guys
definitely thought
know-
it was that.
Do you guys know who Shoeless Joe Jackson was?
No.
He was the
He's a
old
baseball player,
baseball
right?
player during
Yeah.
the Black Sox scandal.
Okay.
He used to stare at a candle every night to make his eyes stronger.
How does that make your
Did it
eyes
work?
stronger?
In a pitch black room, he'd light a candle and he'd stare at I don't know, to
That
make his
sounds
eyes sharper.
absurd. That doesn't
Did it
sound
work?
Like it would work.
I think there's a reason people don't do that. Is it probably doesn't do anything good
Shoeless
for
Joe
you.
did it, and he'd be in the fucking Hall of Fame if he wasn't a cheater.
But how are his eyeballs?
But if it worked,
He's
everybody
dead.
would do it.
No, but what does work for sure is the pen in front of your eye, stare at the ballpoint pen, and move it around to strengthen your eyes.
Well, that's like you're moving your eyeballs.
That's what I'm saying. So that
Yeah.
not everyone does that, but
Uh.
it's just like the flame. Like maybe no one knows about it.
I don't know. That sounds
Yeah.
like poppycock
just-
to
I'm gonna
me.
get my eye sockets ripped, yo.
It all sounds to poppycock to me.
I'm gonna stare at a light bulb in the
Dude,
dark
I'm
room.
telling you, Shoeless Joe did it. I'm not a liar.
All right, well, that's all I had for the non-spoiler section. Do you guys have anything? Like anything else you want to say? Kyle, thoughts on the chapter, second Tyrion chapter? You and Glow said that you
It was
thought the
good.
first Tyrion chapter was your favorite.
Yeah, it was another good one for sure. I see where this is heading. I want to read about him peeing off the wall, you know.
So I feel like we're gonna have a problem. We're gonna have to start recording these more frequently because now that as the characters are splitting up, we're gonna go like 2 months without hearing about the group at the wall, or like go 2 months without hearing about the group in King's Landing if we're getting like Tyrion, Jon chapters back to back. You know what I mean?
Sure.
True.
You guys are gonna forget.
I don't forget anything.
I know what you're saying.
That's why you guys take notes. I get your notes. I get the benefit.
All right. Well, with that, we will let Kyle go. See you, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle.
Later.
Have a
See
good
you,
night,
Kyle.
and then we will continue in the spoiler section coming up next.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
All right, see you later, Kyle. We'll talk to you in the next episode, bud.
Bye, Kyle.
Get the fuck out of here.
All right, on to the spoiler section of Tyrion 2 of Game of Thrones.
Glow, what'd you have?
I mean, obviously Tyrion has fucking dragon dreams and a fascination with dragons and fire his whole fucking life.
I know where Nelson's gonna go with this, and we're probably gonna end up on the longest fucking rant.
But I
There's
agree with you.
I don't agree that Tyrion is a fucking Targaryen.
You don't think
I
that this is anything?
100% believe he is. Especially with the two colored eyes.
He literally said he stares at fires for hours.
Listen,
Hours.
Hours.
when he was a kid, kids obsess about shit all the time.
Staring
There's
at
kids
fire
that-
for hours? Those kids are the serial killers.
So he's a little fucking weirder than a normal kid. A normal kid obsesses about fucking puppy pals right now. It's not a fucking weird thing. They just like puppy pals. He was a fucking kid who liked dragons, and he hated his family, and dragons could kill him. That's all I have
I
to
don't
say
know.
about that.
I
Go
think,
ahead, tell us why Tyrion's
He
a
has a
fucking
purple
Targaryen.
fucking
Well, the thing
eye,
is,
dude.
that's like the point of
He's
this.
also fucking got a half a leg and fucking big head.
Yeah,
He's
I mean,
a fucking.
he was born out of fucking a rape, dude.
He's
Yeah,
got
not
birth
gonna be-
defects.
That's well. Hold
What?
on, like
What? Born from rape has nothing to do with him being a fucking dwarf.
Makes you crazy,
true. Mm,
dude. Look at fucking
You're
Ramsay.
a fucking. All right, I'm done.
I'm not gonna get into it, but like I'm just saying, I think this is a chapter that has a lot of things that definitely point towards him being a Targaryen with all the dragon shit. How he was like fascinated with dragon skulls, has dreams of dragons, but it is weird how he says he doesn't have dreams of dragons anymore. That was one thing that I thought was.
He has them
Mhm.
less.
Keep
he tells-
talking, Nelly.
He tells
Keep
Jon that
talking.
He doesn't have them anymore. No, he says, "Not me. I seldom even dream of dragons anymore. There are no dragons." Which is weird because he said at first he thinks when he's reading that there are no dragons. Then Jon says there are no dragons, and he says like so it seems, but then he's back to saying there are no dragons by the end.
And another point I had, when Tyrion first brought up the dragon dreams, Jon acts all offended, kind of. Like, yeah, are you making fun of me? Like, because I have dragon dreams? Like, get the fuck out of
Yeah,
here.
Tyrion says like he thinks that he was afraid he offended Jon by saying that. So you think Jon's having wolf dreams, and that's why,
Either wolf and or dragon dreams.
or dragon dreams?
Let's not assume anything fucking crazy. He hasn't dreamt of a dragon.
Not yet.
The other thing I had was the quote that I read in the non spoiler part about the grotesqueries. Did that stick out?
About how he'd become a peasant boy or something like that, or they would have killed him.
He said, "If I'd been born a peasant, they might have left me out to die or sold me to some slaver's grotesquerie."
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
I mean that's where he's
action.
gonna end up, and
In Dance with Dragons, he gets sold into a slaver's grotesquerie. the fat Yezin Mo Yeznak, his
he
grotesquerie,
becomes
the big fat guy.
the pig rider.
Yeah, so it just makes me wonder, like, did George R. R. Martin have that part planned back in chapter 13? Is that? that's
I
what
don't
this is,
know.
right?
I mean, if he's gonna get exiled, or he's gotta flee King's Landing. At some point, there's only a couple fucking options for him. At some point, he's probably gonna get stolen, and that's where the fucking midgets go. So
So you think this was part of George's plan the whole time? He knew this was going to happen, or you think it's just?
I think it was definitely an opportunity.
It was a
I
thought
think
that he had in his head, like, maybe he actually does do
I mean,
this.
obviously,
Like,
he
that's a
already
good
thought
idea.
about it now. It's like, oh, shit, well, if this kid wasn't there, all right, let's just, like, kind of flip the script on his whole fucking character and
Like-
take it from, like, the highest of families to, all right, now you're a fucking joke riding a pig.
Now you're a slave, Mr.
Like
Slave.
If you're outlining this whole series, like you're at least like know the main path, right? So like say if I had to have like the outline that I think George R. R. Martin had when he first started writing for Tyrion, I bet you he had something like comes to Winterfell, goes to the Wall, gets captured on the way back south, goes to the Vale, fights in the army, hand at King's Landing for a little bit. Father comes back after the battle, gets hurt. Is kind of nothing in King's Landing, just like injured, and is just a dude in King's Landing, accused of Joffrey's murder, exile. Then he has the whole John Con Griff thing, that journey, and then meeting Dany. Right, like the Slavers doesn't even seem like a big part of that. He's in like
Well, he hasn't met Dany yet.
Well, I think the Slavers is just the avenue to get him to Dany.
Exactly. So I'm saying that the Slavers isn't something that I think would have been part of a outline. It's something that I think that's like one of the things that George R. R. Martin's like, okay, how do I get him from this boat to Dany?
Right. And maybe a little bit different way than, like, and make it a little bit more dangerously than him just walking up to the front gates.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and more realistic. I skipped over the whole like grit, like whoever captures him, Jorah Mormont captures him part. Like, I'm just saying, I bet you that type of stuff wasn't even outlined at the beginning. So it's just kind of crazy that is this a coincidence that he literally has the thing that happens later to Tyrion? And are you saying, Jeff, that that's just something like dwarf setting up in a grotesquerie is something that's not crazy?
Yeah,
so
like
it's
he
just
probably was just like,
coincidence?
I did say that, and it would be funny if I put him through that. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He could
I
have
mean,
used
I think
that
it would
because of
be
this.
I think it would be curious if George ever said, maybe he will when he's done reading or writing, if he had the end in mind and to what depth. Like, is it just about, say Bran ends up becoming the king? Was that the end and everything else just kind of he pieced together as he went? Or, like, did he have a broad outline for each character? Or I'd be curious to see, like, kind of what you're asking is, did he always have that in mind? Or, did he just stumble upon, like, oh, fuck, now he's out in Slaver's Bay? I mean, one, he's in Slaver's Bay. If you got to go through Slaver's Bay, I think a natural
Slavery.
connection would be to get him into slavery.
Yeah. I guess we also haven't seen. I mean, Danny's kind of a slave, like right now where we're at at Game of Thrones. But like, I guess besides Danny, we haven't really seen anyone who's like a slave in like a normal like sense of the word slave. She's kind of like in a higher up position because of the marriage. I guess the only person you could say is like Reek when we get Reek chapters when he's captured. But by the time we're getting Reek chapters, he's not really a slave anymore. So it's like interesting. I think part of the reason George made him be a slave is because there's so much of the story that revolves around slavery, and we don't get the perspective of any slaves.
Missandei?
Yeah, but we don't get chapters from her.
That's true. I'd like a nice Missandei chapter. Maybe her bathing with Grey Worm peeking on her.
Missandei. I don't think that they have a love relationship in the books at all.
He still has a penis. We've just found that out.
I know, but they don't
He
have.
may or may not have a
They
penis.
don't like have a thing in the books. I mean, so I didn't have anything else. One small thing: Dragonbone. We learn a little bit about Dragonbone. It's strong as steel, but really light and more flexible, and it's impervious to fire.
It's pretty crazy how it can be flexible, but also pretty sharp. I mean, I guess a sword could be flexible too, but
Yeah. Well, I don't think Dragonbone can be sharp. I think it's more like
It's gotta be tough too. I mean, why don't they make swords? out of
I
that
guess
shit?
Dragonbone. Nah, dude, I don't know. Fucking, you can make weapons out of normal bone. I'm assuming you could out of.
I'm sure you could,
Yeah,
but like
why not
like the
shoot a
dagger
little rock
that
at a
Bran,
dragonbone?
like the dagger that they try to kill Bran with is Valyrian steel with a Dragonbone hilt. So I bet you it's
True.
more like used in like decorating or like hilt work.
Well, yeah, because
Understood.
if you have metal, the only thing, what would you need?
Yeah, like metal's better than bone. Basically.
For
True that.
what we think,
True
maybe
that.
like Dragon Bone could kill others too. We don't know that.
That's
And
what
they
I was
say
thinking.
and they say it's like really good for bows. Like
Yeah.
you can't use normal bones for bows, right? Maybe it's
Uh,
because bones aren't big enough.
Depends on how you probably go too thin on the bone, and then you try and like pull
Well,
it
there's
back
just
with a
no
string,
bone
and
that's
it'll
that
snap.
big. Like
Well,
no
femur,
solid bone.
I don't know if you found like a big fucking femur or
You
something.
need like a mammoth tusk to try that.
a giant, a giraffe femur.
Yeah,
Ooh,
maybe.
I like your thinking.
But even then, like you wouldn't be able to like carve it into like the recurve shape. You just kind of have to go with what it is, because I'm sure giraffe
You'd have
femurs
to
are
like,
too thick.
you'd have to like chip it off and shit. I don't
Yeah.
know. You have to get pretty creative to.
But
try and
dragons,
get
I
there.
guess, like if you have Balerion the Dread, like that big of dragons, you can have some dragon bone bows. But probably not that
Mhm.
many.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, you get a really big dragon. Well, yeah,
And
that's the other
Danny-
thing. Like, how many
didn't
dragons were there that they just found all these
I
fucking
mean, there was a
bows?
shit ton of dragons back in the
Well,
day.
Danny got a dragonborn bow and gave it to fucking what's his face for her birthday or for her wedding.
And Drogo.
Yeah, a double curved dragon bone bow, taller than she was. That's
Yeah.
what she got from Kotho. And she gave it to Drogo. So now Drogo's got one of these bad boys. And I was gonna say I think Bloodraven uses dragon bone bows, but I think it's Weirwood arrows.
Yeah,
Right, he uses
Weirwood
Weirwood
arrows.
arrows.
I just had one more small thing.
Let me guess. This is about Ghost.
No, it's not.
You don't
Ghost
know anything
doesn't
about
howl.
Ghost?
He's super
Ghost
quiet
doesn't howl.
still.
He's quiet. Tyrion mentions that.
So Tyrion's talking to Jon, and then he notes to himself that whoever his mother had been. Oh wait, first he's talking about ironies and how the world's full of them, and then he brings up how he says his mother left little in him, and then
Yeah.
if she's actually Lyanna Stark, she left a lot in him. And
Yeah.
It's just like a small little thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things that caught my eye. And I don't think that Jon is Lyanna Rhaegar, but this is like a hint definitely towards Lyanna Rhaegar. How he immediately goes from talking about ironies to how Jon looks nothing like his mother, when a lot of people think that Jon looks so much like a Stark because of his mother. So yeah,
I'm
that's
on.
a
I'm
cool
on
little
board.
thing.
I'm on board.
With
And
the
he also has
Rhaegar,
dragon
Lyanna,
dreams.
you're in the R plus L equals J boat, both you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nah.
I'm not in the
B plus A equals J.
A plus whatever equals.
Ashara plus Ned or Brandon. Ashara plus anyone.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I'm in the R plus L equals D.
I
Danny.
don't
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well,
you know
I don't
what?
know.
Let's get before we went into
This is a short chapter, so
before
I'm,
we call
I'm
it off.
done here.
It's
so
fine. All
If
right,
you have
relax.
anything you want, we can do it now. Any extra shit?
Let me think of anything from the chapter. No, I don't. No. I was just fiending so much for a little bit of Game of Thrones action. I watched Daenerys' death scene today.
And
Man, I
Did
just
you
miss
cry?
her. I miss her, man.
I
Good-
watched.
Did you cry? You gonna cry? Maybe piss your pants? Shit and
Think-
come?
Okay.
So I watched episodes 1 and 2 the other day, and then I like watched episode 3 went on, and I fell asleep with it, and then I tried to watch it the next day, but I couldn't get into it. But something happened. I told you I re-listened to our Dunkin' Egg podcast. For some reason, it auto rolled right into our episode 3 of the series, like the Battle of Winterfell podcast. And we were so fucking fired up about that podcast. We're all giving it like 9.5s, and like I couldn't even I literally couldn't sit through it again. Like I was just couldn't keep my interest. It's just crazy how.
Oh, you watched the last season, episode 1, 2. You said.
Yeah, I watched the last season, episode 1, 2.
I
and
mean,
then
the
I
fact
watched
that you
3 and I
liked
fell asleep.
episode. What episode
I
did you
still
love?
like episode 1, 2. 1, 2 are like pretty good Game of Thrones episodes. I was pissed at him at the time because we only had 6 episodes and nothing was happening. But like the chit chats that are going on, like the Sam and Danny scene, like when they find out like that Danny killed her parents, and the John and Sam in the crypt scene, the Jamie coming back scene, the all of them drinking wine. I know you don't like this one, but the pod singing scene.
Pod is a bitch.
I love all that shit.
If you go back to watch the Battle of Winterfell,
All the
and
Arya
I
Gendry
understand.
scenes.
We took so much. We fucking loved it because we were in the moment, and then when we rethought about it, it was like, oh my god, like what the fuck, like why would they do that? Why was this? Blah blah blah. This is stupid. There's still some really cool shit that happens
There
in
is,
that
there
fucking
is.
episode.
100%. Still
They
good
might have been
episode.
really fucking stupid, but again, they're facing the army of the undead for the first time. Of course, they're gonna make some mistakes. when you're game planning for a team that you're not ready for, you're gonna make some mistakes. You got to readjust at halftime, which they did.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but like when we
just at halftime.
when we recorded that podcast, we were all at my place, and while we recorded, we just replayed the episode on mute, and we were like kind of talking about the episode as it played at the same time.
Yeah.
And like when we first roll in, we all give our like thoughts. We're like 9-5, 9-5, 9-5. We're all around like 9-9-5 area. And then as we're watching, like slowly like picking stuff out, we're like, yeah, but like why when this happened, that like didn't really make sense. And Jeff's like, yeah, that like ditch thing they made. I told you guys like before like we got to this battle that thing was stupid and it made no sense. It should have been way bigger. Just like as we're rewatching it, literally 10 minutes after it aired the first time, we're already like picking stuff out about it. So like watching it now, just like that's one of the things. Most Game of Thrones, like it gets better and better the more times you watch it because you like understand more stuff. Like you understand like what Littlefinger's doing, what he's behind. That scene just gets like that episode just gets worse and worse the more you watch it.
You know, we kind of forgot. We kind of forgot that the dragon.
Oh man, I really hope that they made the Night King ending suck because they're saving it for the prequel. But I don't know if I can. I don't know if
What
I
do you mean
faith.
saving for the prequel?
Because they like right before they started filming season 8, they announced like for sure they're gonna film the Long Night prequel, which is about like how the
Yeah, I know
White
that,
Walkers
but
got
how would that
started.
affect how he would die?
like if you're making a show that's about how the White Walkers got started and what the point of the White Walkers is, you kind of want to keep the point of the White Walkers a mystery to spark interest in that show. Like if you have the Night King show up and then tell Bran what he's after the whole way and then kill him, nobody's gonna care about the Long Night show because you already know what he was after.
He's after me.
I think they purposely clouded him in more mystery than they should have. Like they should have given us resolution, but they didn't because they're saving secrets.
I still
for
think
the
that's the
prequel.
stupidest part of the fucking show was that the Night King's just after Bran. Fuck Bran.
He should have been after Gilly's kid.
He should have been after Gilly's kid. That would have made more fucking sense.
It would have made
Fuck
more
Bran.
sense. It would have.
Gilly's
Bran's just like,
kid.
yeah, he's after me because I have history.
Because I can
Yeah, what does that
fucking
fucking mean?
yeah.
You
who gives a
guys-
fuck.
You guys should watch this video. It's so funny. This dude, I watched a few of his videos after I found this one, but the Game of Thrones season 8 one is one that put me on it. This guy does pitch meeting videos where he like cuts back and forth and he pretends to be both people, and one of them he's like dressed up in a suit and the other one he's like dressed up like differently, and he plays the roles as somebody pitching something to somebody, and then like he plays the other roles like the person from HBO. And the pitch for like season 8 is like hilarious. He's like, so Bran's in the Godswood working a raven, and the guy from HBO is like, oh, that's interesting, why? And then the guy, it cuts back and he's like oh, we leave it really unclear, and the guy from HBO is like, oh, that's weird, and then the other guy just like keeps going. But like the way he does the pitch, he just calls out like all the inconsistencies. He's like, yeah, so we sent Ghost in. He's like, oh, what happens as he dies? Like, we don't tell you. He's like, maybe you find out later. And just like everything he just like points out. And then it's like, oh, so Danny shows up and gets her dragon shot. And the guy from HBO was like, wouldn't she have been expecting the Iron Fleet? And he's like, oh, you see, we kind of forgot that. And then they use the "we kind of forgot" line a bunch of times. I'll send it to you guys. I'll send it to you two after this. We'll post it out on our Twitter. Check it out on our Twitter. It's a great video. But with that, I got nothing else to talk about. Short spoiler section for this week. Again, if you guys have anything else that we think we missed, or you want us to talk about something completely unrelated, write it in, and we'll talk about it when we get a chance. Anything from you guys?
No,
Nope.
no mind, boys.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
All right, peace out, boys.